Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Hopefully the others will be joining us as we go. So thank you for attending today's webinar on the Commission on Economic Inclusion's Diversity and Inclusion Organization Assessment. Today is focused on an introduction to the assessment and kind of just a refresher for those of you who maybe haven't used the tool in a while or who are new and interested in taking the assessment in 2019. So I'm going to ask you to hold your questions until the end. We're recording today's webinar so that we can post it and others can use it in the future. So if you could hold those questions until the end, we will be able to have some dialogue then in our chat function. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward. So on our agenda today, we're going to have a brief overview of the Commission's mission. We're going to have an overview of the D&I assessment and talk about some frequently asked questions. I'm going to be showing you a demo of the assessment tool itself. We'll talk about what happens once you finish the assessment and how you get your results. And then again, at the end, we'll cover any questions that you might have. So the mission of the Commission on Economic Inclusion, which is a program of Greater Cleveland Partnership, is to convene, champion, and leverage the region's assets to achieve measurable demonstrated increases in minority representation on boards, senior management teams, and in the workforce, and with supplier diversity spend. So as you can see, our mission is really to address racial inequity within the region. And we really believe that a diverse and inclusive economy is going to strengthen Northeast Ohio, and we do that in a multitude of ways. Our work addresses kind of two parallel but really equally important areas, and those are workforce and workplace diversity and inclusion, and also growing minority businesses. And everything we do, all of our programming, our initiatives, other projects like the assessment have this underpinning of research in racial equity, and that's the lens that we're constantly looking through as we work on economic inclusion in Northeast Ohio. So that was a brief overview of the Commission itself. One of the Commission's longest standing initiatives is the Diversity and Inclusion Organization Assessment. So for the past 17 years or so, the Commission has collected data on two types of data that focus on diversity and inclusion efforts. The survey has taken different forms over the years. The current version of the assessment was established in 2016. So for those of you who are new or who maybe participated a little bit further in the past, it might look a little bit different to you when we get into the demo later. In this version of the assessment, two types of data are collected. The first type of data are demographics. So this includes employee demographics on race and gender. For those industries who collect data a little bit differently, we have some industry-specific demographic sections of the survey. These include law firms, healthcare institutions, higher education, and professional services firms. So these sections were developed specifically because these industries felt like they needed something a little more customized to the way that they categorize their employees, which is obviously different than kind of a generic company. The version of the assessment we're going to see today won't be looking at these specific industries, but if you're interested in seeing those sections, I can send them to you at a later time. Another type of demographic data we're collecting are numbers on supplier diversity. So for some organizations who have supplier diversity programs, we're interested in learning more about the spend in those categories. The second type of data that we collect are data on an organization's best practices as they relate to diversity and inclusion. So we've aligned our survey with the Global Diversity and Inclusion Benchmarks, which was developed by an organization called the Diversity Collegium. And these are kind of thought leaders in the D&I space who constantly come back to this model to update it and create this tool that supports organizations as they develop and implement D&I across their organization. We followed their 14 category structure. So as you'll see in the demo of the assessment later, we have 14 categories of best practices that organizations can participate in. So we're going to move on to some frequently asked questions. These are some things that come up pretty frequently for people who are unfamiliar with the survey or who just need to learn a little bit more about it. So firstly, the assessment is open during the first quarter of the year. So for 2019, we'll be launching the assessment on January 7th, and we will be closing it out mid-March. So that will be March 15th, which is a Friday. This is about 2.5 months that organizations have to complete the survey, and we hope it gives them a little bit of time after the end of the year to kind of compile their data and bring it together. Once that data is compiled from various departments, we know it's not all just coming, from HR. There might be some organizations that have to go elsewhere, maybe to another department for supplier diversity and things like that. Once all the data is actually pulled together, entering it into the assessment tool should take only about 20 to 30 minutes. If your department doesn't have the information on the survey, the link and the survey password can be shared across your organization. It can be sent to multiple people so that multiple people are working on the survey at any point in time. If you need to stop in the middle of completing the assessment, we know we're all busy people. We might not have 30 minutes to sit down and enter the data. That's okay. Your progress is saved as you go, as you'll see later. So you can come back to the survey as many times as you need to finish your survey. You can print and save your answers. Before you submit your assessment to us, you have the option to save all of your data as a PDF. And we think that's a great tool to use so that you have a reference to go back to when you're looking at the results at a later time. It's nice to be able to remember, what you put in there and be able to see how the results came out. The results of the survey come in various forms. Once you complete your submission, you get some immediate feedback on your best practices score. And apart from that, we send out a custom report and an individual organization scorecard following the close of the survey. So once we close the survey, we aggregate all of the data together. We send out those results the next month. So that will be April of 2019. Now I'm going to get into the demo. So once you've received a link to the survey and your organization's password, you'll be able to log in and you'll see our welcome page. So in the interest of time, I've actually filled out this survey with some fake company information, but I'm going to click through it as I would if I were filling it out for the first time. So on the welcome page, we have a little bit of an overview of the commission, a little bit of introductory information that we covered just a few minutes ago. We have some of those important dates. So we have our due date here. As I mentioned, submissions will be due by March 15th of next year. There's some technical pieces, how you click forward, where to go. Your table of contents is constantly on the left-hand upper corner. Again, we mentioned that you can save a PDF of your responses for your records. You will not see a save button because your information is being saved, as I mentioned, as you click through the survey. And then we also have my contact information here. I am the program manager in charge of the assessment. So if you ever have any questions or need to contact me, my information is always here. If you'd like to download a printable view of the assessment, you have that option here. And at the very bottom of the welcome page, we have some introductory information if you want to dig deeper into any of these sections. So I'll just click on one of these. If you want to see what's new about the survey since 2016, we talk about those 2 new features that we've implemented since the survey has been redesigned. One aspect of that redesign was that any organizations who've completed the survey the year before will receive a pre-populated link for the next year, which contains all of their entry from that previous year. So we hope this is a time saver for those of you who just have a couple of changes and tweaks to plug in, and that most of your information isn't changing, especially in regards to best practices. We hope it's a little bit of a time saver and a little bit of an incentive to come back and participate the next year. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next page. The first page of information we're asking for is your organization's contact information. So as you can see here, I've started filling out my fake organization's info. Just to note, anything with an asterisk is a required field. That doesn't mean you have to put something in there. As you can see, our CEO contact is required, but I've put in NA for phone number and email. We'd like to have as much contact information as possible, but again, the required field just means you have to plug something in there. So for my organization, MB Inc., I'm at 123 Main Street in Cleveland. I'm the CEO, and I'm also the D&I assessment contact. This is another very important required field. We want to know who to contact about the survey, who wants to receive the results, and things like that. So this is really our most important person when it comes to the assessment, and we need that information. We also ask for diversity contact and HR contact, procurement and construction contact if applicable. So once I was finished with this page, I would go ahead and click ahead with the forward arrow, and at the bottom you'll always see how far along you are in your survey completion so that you can kind of gauge how much left you have to do. Since I've already filled in the information, if I clicked forward it would take me straight to the end, so I'm going to use my table of contents up here to move forward. The second page of information is your organization's information. These are a few more demographic questions about the organization. We ask for your organization's type. This is required, so whether you're a for-profit, nonprofit, or government or public entity. We also need to know if you're headquartered in Northeast Ohio, and there's a reference here to all of the counties that would qualify as Northeast Ohio. We ask about your industry segment. As I mentioned earlier, certain industries have separate sections of employee data to fill out. So based on the industry segment you choose here, that would flag the survey to then give you those extra set of questions. So if I was a law firm and I clicked on law, I would then get that extra set of questions. Because I've chosen arts and culture here, I won't see those. We ask if your organization has a board. I clicked on yes, so that directed the survey to ask if they're appointed by a public appointing entity. If I had clicked no, I wouldn't see this question. We ask about certification, and then we also ask about organization size. So based on your number of employees for all locations, how big are you, small, mid, or large? And then we also ask for a direct count of employees in Northeast Ohio only as of the last calendar year. So again, I'm going to scroll back up to my table of contents to move forward. Employee demographics. Here is where we get into some of the meat of the survey. At the very top, we have some definitions that might be useful to you as you look at these questions. The first, again, is defining what is a Northeast Ohio county. And anytime you click these boxes, the information shows up. The second box talks about the EEOC definitions for race and ethnicity, and this might be useful if you need a refresher on that. So as you can see here, workforce demographics is our first section. We're looking for a head count for just Northeast Ohio as of the last calendar year. And again, anywhere there's an asterisk, we need a number. So here we want to know about the total employees in Northeast Ohio, broken down by race and gender. And then we have a couple of other sections that aren't required, but that we'd like to know about. So that would be employees broken out by new hires in Northeast Ohio, promotions, full-time and part-time, again, all by race and gender. The second piece of this is senior management. So if you need a definition of senior management, we have that here, and that's been adapted again from the EEOC definition. The senior management demographics filled in the exact same way. We're looking at senior managers in Northeast Ohio by race and gender. And then we'd also like to know about any senior manager new hires or promotions as well. So again, I'm going to go back up to my table of contents to move forward. The next section is a board demographic section. Because in the previous section on organization information, I said yes, that my organization does have a board. It directed me to this board demographic section. If you check no, that your organization doesn't have a board, this will not show up for you. So we're only asking this if it's relevant to your organization. I filled in some numbers here again, following those same definitions by race and gender. I'm going to go ahead and move forward. The next section asks if your organization currently has a D&I initiative or policy in place. I said yes for my organization, so I'm going to go ahead and move forward. The next section starts to kind of level set for the best practices questions. So this is a more descriptive of the global diversity and inclusion benchmarks model that I mentioned before. So this is the standard that we use along with the 14 categories to assess best practices within an organization. This is a visual of the model. If you're interested in learning more about the benchmarks, there is a very thorough document that you can find online. It's about 80 to 100 pages long that talks about how these benchmarks were brought up. Each one goes into each one in depth and looks at kind of the methodology behind these benchmarks. This is just an informational page. I'm going to go ahead and move forward. The next section gets you ready for the best practices. So it says, this is a tool for improvement. We strongly encourage you to use it for this purpose. So truly there's no benefit to inflating your answers in the next section. It's really just a set of tools for you to use as you move forward in planning for your D&I strategy. We've gotten permission from the Global Diversity and Inclusion Benchmarks to use their model. So that's here if you'd like to see more about that. There's a couple of indicators here, what size organizations can benefit most from working with this model and how it applies globally. So those are just some more informational topics there. I'm going to go ahead and move forward and get into the best practices questions. So our questions are set up again by category. Each of the 14 has its own section. And at the bottom of each section, we have this comment box. I wanted to make sure to address this because if there's anything you'd like us to know about this category and what your organization is doing, you can type it in here. Each practice is something that you can check off if your organization is currently employing it. If the category doesn't apply to your organization's D&I efforts, you would click this last box here, and this will show up in every section. As you can see with the asterisks, all of these sections need an answer. So again, if you're not sure or you don't think it applies to you, go ahead and check the last box. It doesn't count against your score in the end. Each of these strategies is weighted according to that Global Diversity and Inclusion Benchmark model. So based on how sophisticated a strategy it is, it might be worth up to 1 to 3 points. So the total score in the end can be up to 170. Obviously, we won't see 170 checkboxes here. That's because some of them are weighted higher than others. So I'm not going to go through each strategy. We would probably be here all day, but I am going to go ahead and just talk about category 1 to kind of give you a little bit of an overview of what it looks like. So category 1 is about D&I vision, strategy, and the business case. So for my organization, I said, we do have a compelling D&I vision, strategy, and business case has been developed, and the benefit has been communicated to all of our employees. My organization has examined its systems, practices, and culture and created strategies to reduce barriers to inclusion. And I've also said that D&I is well integrated into my organization's strategy. So this is an example of some best practices that my fake organization has employed. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next category. Category 2 is focused on leadership and accountability. So again, I've chosen some strategies here that apply to my company, and there are some that do not. Category 3 is about structure and implementation. So for example, I said that my company has a D&I champion or staff person who's responsible for diversity and inclusion. Category 4 is about recruitment, retention, development, and advancement. Again, I've checked off some boxes here. Category 5 is about benefits, work-life integration, and flexibility. Category 6 is about job design, classification, and compensation. Category 7 is focused on D&I learning and education. Category 8 is around assessment, measurement, and research. Category 9 is focused on D&I communications. Category 10 is about connecting D&I and sustainability. Category 11 is about community, government relations, and social responsibility. Category 12 is about products and services development. Category 13 is around marketing and customer service. And category 14, our final category, is about supplier diversity. So these are all of the best practice categories. I'm going to go ahead and move on to our supplier diversity section. So the next section here pertains to supplier diversity data. Some organizations do have supplier diversity policies in place. And for those organizations, we'd like to know what their minority business spend is in relation to their total spend. So as you can see in our table here, we have boxes for total spend for the entire organization and total minority business spend for the entire organization. And then we have the same boxes broken out for Northeast Ohio. We have construction spend in Northeast Ohio, total and minority business enterprise, and number of vendors, total and minority business enterprise. If you're unsure about what an MBE is, we have a definition here. You can click to read more. We ask a few yes or no questions about supplier diversity in your organization. So does your organization have third-party certification required for reporting? Are your supplier diversity goals a set percentage of your total spend? And we also ask if you have a major project, construction project planned for the next year budgeted for more than $1 million. So those are some of the categories on supplier diversity that we're interested in. This is not a required field. Any of this is not required, so it's really just for those where this is pertinent to their organization. I'm going to go ahead and move forward. So now that we've filled in all the numbers, we've answered all our best practices data, this last piece, additional information, is where you can let us know anything else you want us to know about your organization's D&I efforts. So if you want to talk to us about the policies you have in place, programs that you have going, we have a text box here. We also have a file uploader. So we would love you to upload any files that you have pertaining to what you're doing. We think it's really awesome to be able to learn more about your D&I story. And we're hoping to find a way to effectively share these in the future. So if you'd like to share any of that with us, the option is here to upload the files. The next section talks about eligibility for recognition. So for anyone who participates in the assessment, you have the option to be eligible for a best-in-class award. So organizations are eligible if they have all of these requirements listed here. They need to be a member in good standing with GCP. You need to sign our leadership commitment form, which is linked below. You need to fill out the best practices sections applicable to your organization, so those 14 sections we just went through. You need to complete the workforce demographic section and also the senior level management demographic section. In addition to those, if you'd like to be eligible for a board diversity or supplier diversity award, you need to fill out those sections as well. So our leadership commitment form is linked here. Once you've signed it, you can upload it right back on this page, upload it back to us. And really the point of this page is to opt out if you would like to not be considered for any recognition award. So we have checkboxes here if you'd like to opt out of any of these categories. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward. As you can see, we're almost done. So our resources page has links to commissioned resources. So these are meant to really help you as you grow your D&I strategy. Most pertinent here is our best practice library. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up just to show you how it relates to the assessment. So in our best practice library, each of those 14 categories are the way that we've organized our resources here. So if I click on the table of contents to the left, I can see each of those 14 categories that we just went through is set up here. So if I want to learn more about job design, classification, and compensation, I can click here and get taken to that research that we've compiled. So we hope this is a resource that's meaningful as it connects to the assessment and those questions that we're asking. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to the tool. We also link to the Commission's website and our website of events as well. So this is the end of the assessment. This stop page is just a reminder that once you click through, you can't come back. So make sure that everything is, what you want it to be. You've finished filling in your information. Once we submit this survey, we'll have a weighted score for the best practice categories on the last page. So that's some kind of immediate feedback you get when you complete the assessment. So I'm going to go ahead and click forward. Again, it's checking. I'm ready to complete. Yes, I'm going to move forward. So this is where all of our responses have been saved. So if you'd like to save all of your responses, we have a download PDF here. So if I wanted to keep this, I can download this here. It would open as a PDF. And once I scroll down, you'll see it's everything that we've just entered. I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom and submit my final submission. So again, we have the stop sign to make sure you're truly done. You've downloaded your submission. You don't need to come back to it. This is our final stopping point. I'm going to click through, and now I've completed the assessment. So this is that immediate feedback on best practices. As you can see, we have our total score out of 170, and we have our score for each category. So this is the immediate feedback that we get once we complete the assessment. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go back to my presentation. Okay, so as we saw, upon survey completion, we're able to see our organization's best practices scores, and we have links to suggested resources for the future. In addition to that, the next month after the survey closes, which will be April of next year, each organization who participates will receive a link to their customized aggregate report and their individual scorecard. So this is an interactive site where you're able to see the data, filter it in a couple of different ways. We're able to filter by organization size, organization type, and by your industry sector. And then you're also able to see the aggregate results in line with your organization's individual results. Again, this is a password protected link, only sent out to your organization and viewable by your organization. In addition to that, again, our Best in Class award recognition is a way that we share our results with the community. So you can be recognized for any of those demographic categories that we saw before and by size. And those are given out at the Greater Cleveland Partnership annual meeting, generally around May or June of next year. So I'm going to go ahead and leave up my contact information here. And if anyone has any questions, you can go ahead and type them in the chat box now. I'll wait for a few minutes. If not, feel free to reach out to me at a later time. I'm always available to talk about the assessment, give demos where needed, and things like that. Again, we will be launching on January 7th of 2019 and wrapping up at the end of the quarter. So we hope all of you will participate and complete the assessment next year. Okay, I don't see any questions, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. Thank you all so much for participating. Hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.